really judged by port state control, and that's how we use as our measuring stick. And for the 12th year in a row, being Qualship 21, just being announced last Friday by the U.S. Coast Guard, it's really an amazing thing for us. I mean, we were very pleased with that. And then, of course, recently Tokyo MOU released their whitelist, and we're climbing up we're very firmly ahead of our competitors on the Tokyo MOU whitelist. And also Paris MOU was just released. Was that yesterday, John? Or?
Yeah.
Yesterday. And so I would always say that when you're looking at a registry and they're talking about being a quality registry, you really have to look at the success factors on the port state control side, because that's really our measuring stick, our report card. We put a lot of research. There's a reason it happens that we are Qualship 21 12 years in a row. We have put a lot of resources into the U.S. ports. We have a cadre of our own exclusive employee inspectors in ports like New Orleans and Houston and Baltimore and New York, in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Coast. We have Long Beach. And we deploy these inspectors to actually ensure the quality of the vessels coming into the United States. And that's not just a U.S. Situation that we have. It's worldwide. I'm looking at down, just maybe introduce our folks here. And tell you, we have Richard Diaz. He's our director, or technical director from Asia. He does the same kind of thing in our, what we call Region 1. Also, we have from Asia, Antigone. We have Laura Sherman from the U.S. Just quick introductions here. We all know Theo, locally. John Ramage is our COO and the head of our Maritime Services Group. So John is the one who really coordinates the inspections and the inspection regime, and certainly the technical group worldwide. And of course, last but not least, we have our managing partner and CFO, Tony Gaida, at the end of the table. So we have our big group here, like everybody would expect for Pοσειδωνίων. But just to kind of start off this press briefing, I really wanted to talk about the port state control, because port state control really got very active in the 80s, 90s, because flag states weren't doing their job. And we as a flag state, we do our job, and we are always improving. We're always striving to improve, and we will be judged again by the numbers that come out on port state control. And I can't emphasize how difficult it is to remain Qualship 21 for 12 years. Because we did, in fact, fall off Qualship at one point in time, back in the year 2002, 2003. And so I know what it's like to be there where you fall off. If you look at the Qualship release from U.S. Coast Guard, it's basically a massacre as far as I'm concerned. I mean, so many major flags have fallen off. Prominent flags that have been on Qualship have been knocked off Qualship, including some of our competitors like Liberia, Bahamas, and Singapore. Well, Singapore is not really a competitor of ours, but some major flags, if you look at the report itself, have come off. But I think I'm going to hand over to Theo. This is his territory. We have our office is right next door, as many of you know, literally next door. Theo has 40 people working there in Piraeus, and that's the way what we've done worldwide. Is we've really have focused on making sure that we have the resources in all the major port areas and markets to service the owners, because you have the ships are moving around 24/7. There's problems all the time. I'm looking at Richard. Richard's always dealing with vessel issues, trying to keep the vessels moving when there's issues in a port, because time is money in our business. And what we can do as a flag state is to help our owners keep their vessels trading in a safe and efficient manner.
Yeah. The only thing I would like to add from our side, and then I guess it's better to have a sort of dialogue question from your side, is that apart from what Bill described before about the quality distinctions that we have as a flag, and this is quite measurable now, the other measurable thing for us, especially in Greece, and we are proud of, is that we have been, for the last year or so, we have been the #1 flag in Greece, and we are sustaining and remaining in that position for over a year now. And I'm happy that even the last report before Pοσειδωνίων from Civic and Finance paper shows that we are 8 million, almost 7 to 8 million deadweight tonnage ahead of the second foreign flag in Greece. We are the biggest foreign flag in terms of deadweight, and we are the biggest flag in Greece in terms of number of ships registered in the flag. And I think the fact that the Greek owners show a preference to the registry, and we have seen a tremendous growth for the last 15 years, is attributed, as Bill said, to the resources that we have in Greece, the with almost 40 or more than 40 people working in the office, offering a wide range of services from technical to seafarers licensing and inspections and registration process. And also the fact that the Greeks are changing their, I think not the culture, I would say the ordering new ships and buying younger tonnage than 15 or 20 years ago. And the Marshall Islands is a flag state that the average age of our fleet is less than 8 years old. We are very modern registry. We have very good procedures and legislation for our owners. And I think the quality and the good service that not only the Greek office but the whole network of offices can offer is very important to the Greek owners, and that's why they choose Marshall Islands flag. When I started 15 years ago, Marshall Islands was not even on the top 10. We were a very small registry in the Greek market. And I think it's a great success story for all of us in the registry that we've seen the Marshall Islands becoming #1, and hopefully the target is to become #2 in the world, hopefully sometime this year or beginning of next year. But apart from the numbers, I think what we said before is to keep the quality. I mean, we want to grow, but we want to grow and keep the quality as high as possible. Because if we don't keep the quality, we're going to lose some of our good owners. So it's not only the numbers, it's not only becoming #1 or #2, but it's becoming #1 or #2 and keep the same level of service and quality and reputation. That's what I want to say from my side. I would prefer to have some questions from your side. I mean, you have the material in front of you. Laura has some additional information, the recent report from Paris MPU, Tokyo within the US Coastal Report, that shows where the Marshall Islands stands. And we're happy to cover any of the topics that are of your interest.
John, do you have anything to add, John? John runs our maritime services group worldwide, so I think maybe you have a few words, John, before we get to questions and answers.
As you all are all aware, I mean, the ship registry business, for want of a better expression, is incredibly competitive now. And we made a decision very early on that if we're going to compete, let's compete on the service that we provide. I know we keep banging on about the service, but as a service industry, we really stand or fall by the level of service that we provide. And as Bill has mentioned, and Dave's mentioned, we resource this very strongly. We've got over 360 people in our organisation worldwide. That includes technical experts, marine safety experts, so that if the owner comes to us with a question, we have people who are qualified to answer that. And one of the real successes is our decentralised approach, where we can have a local service dealing with a local client in his own time, with people that understand and recognise the client. I mean, shipping, I believe, is still one of the few face-to-face businesses. So we spend a lot of time going out, talking to our clients, meeting the clients, so we build up a relationship with the client. It's not just a number on the end of a telephone, you know. We actually know the people that we deal with. So clients have a level of trust and comfort with us that we can then develop. And that's also part of the reason for the growth. People know they can phone us up, they can get an answer, a sensible answer, and that gives them trust in the performance of the registry.
Well, actually, just being at the Pοσειδωνίων exhibition, we had a good chance to meet all the classification societies. And, you know, just exactly what you said, one recurring theme was they were very satisfied with our Piraeus office, with our technical guys there. But the line they always said, the common line was, at least we got people we can talk to who understand the problem and can give a solution, you know. Because sometimes they may speak to some administrations who just said, this is the regulation, this is the regulation. But with us, we know the regulations, but we know how to enforce the regulations as well. So that was something that we saw.
I think from my point of view, if I can just make another point, is that if you look at some of the national flags, the various governments are cutting back on their internal bureaucracies. You know, you can if you look at the UK, for example, the government is cutting back on everything from the police to the post office to the maritime sector. They don't want to really fund that, and we're now seen as a good alternative to some of the national flags because of our positions in the various MOUs, and they know they can get an answer. Whereas with the government bureaucracies, as Richard said, because they're so short-staffed, they don't have the manpower to be able to respond effectively.
And it's not just the national flags. It's what I think when you were talking about our model of decentralization, no one has the reach that the Marshall Islands Registry has. I mean, as far as if you look at where our office network is, the number of employees we have, and it's not just the number of employees, as John has mentioned and Richard has mentioned. It's the actual expertise that they bring to the table. It's a lot of times you'll say, well, we'll hear one of our competitors say, well, we have a Hong Kong office. Well, yeah, they have a Hong Kong office of 4 people. And we have 34 people in Hong Kong and 40 here. So we really do resource the offices with and bring in the right people and spend the money. And the money that we make on the registry, we reinvest in the registry to make it better and better. It's a very simple business model. I mean, the decentralization process that we've gone through, if you think about it, it's not that, it's really not that hard. It's really the model itself. I mean, basically, it's just to put the resources and put the right people in the places and be there to answer the questions from the owner-operators and keep the ships moving. It's really that simple. But it's a matter of committing to the markets, committing to and bringing on board the right people, spending the money, frankly.
It is obvious that you have adapted to the philosophy of the Greek symbols these years. That's why you have succeeded to be one of the greatest flag states in Greek city. I'm referring to the Greek city. Can you describe what is the most competitive advantage of the registry of the flag state that Greek shipowners have appreciated? It is the flexibility, it is the ability to solve the problems with the port state controls, especially US Coast Guard. What is the main competitive advantage of it?
I think Theo should answer that.
Yeah. I think it's a mix of things. It's good that you mentioned that dealing with port state control or US Coast Guard or Quality 21 or the network of offices. I think the Greeks appreciate a bit of everything. If you start with a base of it's a quality flag, then you have to move on offering a better service. So everybody says it's a quality flag, as we said before. And if we take it for granted, then we can see what distinguishes the registries between themselves. And I think what makes us really well known in Greece and the Greek owners are happy with the flag is that we have a 40 people office. We offer all kinds of services here. I mean, everybody can register a ship, but the follow-up is the issue. We have inspectors in the office and technical people that can deal with all daily matters that the owners want. I mean, if you have an issue on board the ship, or if you have a failure on the equipment, if it's a Saturday night and one of the officers has to go home and the ship needs to sail, we can cover all these things with decision-making in Greece. And that's what the Greek owners and especially the technical people and the marine operators appreciate. That they can pick up the phone, call our office, we have an issue of what we're doing, they find always someone and they get an answer immediately. And that's what they like. I mean, and of course, the quality is also important. I mean, as per the last report, we are the only major flag in the world, together with Hong Kong, that we maintain the quality 21 status. And especially for ships that trading with US, this plays an important role because they have to sustain less inspections and they will not be targeted by the US Coast Guard.
How important is price balanced against those issues of quality and service and everything else?
You're a great question. Price is always important, and we have to remain competitive with our, with the other major flags as far as pricing, because especially in these markets, I mean, the owners are definitely looking to save costs. So it's a challenge. You have to be able to be competitive to get the ships in, but then you have to actually make some money so you can resource the registry and pay for the people that you need. But one of the things I think that the value that comes out of all of this is the fact that the owners do appreciate it when they have problems. Of course, we had a problem. A Greek owner had problems with a port state control in China, and we were able to solve the issue very quickly. And he was so impressed, he decided to give us the 6 next ships that weren't slated for our flag. So the owners understand better than anybody that time is money, and if their vessel is held up by port state control, and there's nobody home from the flag state, that's the key thing, is you have to have somebody there. You have to have the port state. We don't just interact with the owners. We interact with the port state class, as Richard's mentioned. Port state control knows who we are. They know our guys in the major ports. They know a lot of times what happens is, for instance, in our Roosendaal office, which is between Antwerp and Rotterdam, a lot of times the gentleman that runs that office tells me, they'll call and they'll say, well, there's a problem. Can you handle it? And he's there on the other end of the line, so he will handle it. But if port state control doesn't have anybody to call, then there's a problem. And that's really the issue. I mean, if there's nobody on the other end of the line, as John would say, then you can't solve it as a flag state. So we really, for instance, in the U.S., I mean, how do we deal with the Coast Guard? We have an annual meeting every year that's scheduled with the Coast Guard. That's a big meeting, it's almost like a mini summit. We go through everything that the registry's involved in. We talk about IMO issues. We go through some of the port state control issues that we've had working with the various ports. There's no secret that some ports in the U.S. are more difficult than other ports. And so we discuss pretty much everything. But it's not only that. We also have ex-U.S. We have 2 U.S. ex-U.S. Coast Guard admirals working on behalf of the registry, and several of our employees in the States are ex-U.S. Coast Guard. And so we're visiting them at the district level, at the port level, port captain level. You can't just meet in Washington and with the Coast Guard. You have to meet at the various port level, getting to working, in the nitty gritty. And so, for instance, we had some issues in the port of New Orleans. And so we added 2 inspectors in the port of New Orleans. It's a very busy port. Obviously, everybody knows it's a big port for bulk shipment, but also, certainly a fair amount of the energy side too. So we try to respond to those issues, and I think that very much helped us stay on the fall ship. Is that we really focused on some of the ports in the U.S. that we were having difficulties in, and again, that costs money. And when you spend the money, get the right people in there, and it's ultimately the owner-operators are benefiting from that. You want your flag coming into the port to be a respected flag. You want the guys, on the ground at port state control say, no, that's a Marshall Islands vessel. Yeah, let's not look at that one. Let's look at the next one coming up the river, kind of thing. And that's how we handle these things. So. Hi, how are you?
There's been a sort of renewed focus on regulatory issues in the maritime space in the wake of the El Faro incident. I know ABS in particular has come under quite a lot of scrutiny for that. Has there been any change in the tone of the conversations that you're having in the US?
Well, I mean, we're obviously following. We have one of our maritime folks in the U.S. he's following the hearings, and reporting back to John and myself and some others, some of the thought part. What we're trying to learn, it's an unfortunate disaster, but there always can be lessons learned, and so we're heavily involved in trying to learn the lessons from that. As far as the regulatory side of what the flag state does, first of all, it's your duty as a flag state, as you know, under UNCLOS, but to be a regulator. But we also want to do things that are on the smart side as far as regulation is concerned. We resource our IML delegation with a lot of expertise, because really what happens at the IMO really comes down to the working group level, and John can speak to this a little bit better. He's based in London and deals with our IMO delegation on an almost daily basis. And we want to get into the working group side of things. We want to make sure that we bring the expertise to the working group that can help the regulation come down, because IMO is going to make regulation. We all know that. Well, we want it to be a smart regulation. We want people with expertise in operating the vessels You know, like for instance, I always love to tell the story of John, who first started with us several years ago. He got dragged onto one of the STCW delegations that he didn't want to be involved in, but John prefers the regulatory side of the business being handled by other folks. He's much more on the operations side. But, you know, he was very, it sounds like a joke, but I remember him when we say there was an Irishman, he's a Scotsman, and an American. It sounded like the beginning of one of these jokes. He said, out of this group of, 20-odd people, on a working group that were going to do watchkeeping, you know, standard watchkeeping, and, you know, and those are only 3 guys that sailed out of the whole group. So you had, 20-odd people sitting there. You were going to try to decide what you need from watchkeeping standards on a vessel that haven't sailed. So that's the point, is what I'm trying to make, is that we put practical people. You know, John sailed for several years on tankers, and has been involved in ship management for 15 years after that, before he even joined the registry. Those are the kind of people we like to send to the IMO, that have that kind of expertise, that can, make the regulation and understand, what the challenges are of operating the ship.
Is that still a common issue, with the perhaps lack of hands-on expertise in the IMO committees? I know I was at MEPC. Which number was
69.
69 in March, or wherever it was, and there seemed to be a lot of idealists around.
Richard, you were there, right?
Yeah, I was there, yes.
And what was Marshall Island advocating for there, and how did it?
Well, we were involved in, I think, all the working groups, whether it was with MAPOR Annex 6 and air emissions, ballast water treatment, and the ballast water convention is not yet ratified, but we are still very much involved in trying to get something sensible and workable for the owners and for everybody as well. Yeah. So,
what is sensible and workable?
Well, because like you said, there are a lot of idealists, there are a lot of NGOs over there, there are a lot of impractical suggestions. For example, just to give an example, where even there was a proposal to have fresh water as ballast water, and then there was so many people who stood up and said, no, it has to be tested because there are additives in the water. There was one side saying the same fresh water can be drunk by a seafarer. Why is it so harmful that you need to go through the whole process of testing it? So you need to have some sensible people to speak up as well.
I think when it first mooted, I mean, the ballast water convention has been talked about for so long, and I think when it first, it was quite sensible. Then, unfortunately, shall we say, to take your phrase, the idealists got hold of it, and then developed something that's become unworkable. So you've got regulation that's been mooted that, 1, you don't have the equipment that can handle it. 2, nobody can agree on how it's going to be tested. 3, nobody agrees on the equipment. So why would a ship owner invest, say, $1 million in a piece of equipment that he doesn't know is going to be approved? If they had maybe started from a lower base initially, you would have had a workable plan.
What are the changes that you see are necessary to the current state of regulation? I know there were some amendments that have already been tabled for if and when it comes to the board.
Well, I think there's a group of people who are far better qualified than I am.
Yeah, I think what they're working on now is more stringent G8 guidelines, so that the equipment that is made will actually pass the test and be closer to passing a US Coast Guard test. So I think,
Well, that's one of the differences. I mean, I think the requirements are similar, but the testing methods, there's no consensus in testing.
And is there a lot of progress in bringing those into parity?
Well, at the moment, the correspondence group is going on. I think there's a deadline somewhere in the next Friday or something. And then they have a special working group 1 week before MEPC 70, where they will again sit down for a week, just on the week prior to MEPC 70 in October. So, yeah, they are working hard to actually have a solution, to have a better proposal at MEPC 70. So.
Yes, I want to stay in that field in regulation. The regulations come stricter and stricter in shipping. This is one side. The other side is the shipping company, the owners, who call to adapt and follow that new strict regulation. As I understand, the registry, the flag set is the middle of 2 sides. How can deal with this situation. You think that owners is ready and easy to follow these regulations? They press you to make some changes or to be more soft somehow?
I think one of the difficulties is that when the regulation then is agreed at IMO and then it's ratified by the various countries, it is the responsibility of the flag state to make sure that the regulations are properly implemented. And our job is to make sure that our owners understand the regulations, and that if there is a problem, that they can come to us and we can discuss ways to achieve that regulation. You know, it's like, you know, there's a brick wall in front of you. You don't have to knock the brick wall down to get to the other side. You can go round it, or you can go over it, or whatever. And as long as you achieve the end result, you know, you can achieve what is required. But one of the important things to be able to achieve that is to have people you can talk to who understand what the regulations are. Because sometimes coming out of IMO, the regulation, the wording of the regulation is very complicated and very difficult to understand. That's always my problem. I can never understand what they come out of that.
Well, that's our job. Our job is to interpret it, you know, to get the interpretation and work with the owner operators. A lot of times they're calling us and say, well, how do we work with this? How do we do this? And as John said, you have to have the guys there that can understand it. And we have several employees that have come from ABS. We have several employees from LR, DNV. So we've hired a lot from the classification societies, as you would expect. And I think that's one thing that Richard was trying to say before. The thing that you get from the class societies, and I've been involved in flag state for 25 years now. Early on in my career, I can say it was a bit of an unequal balance from our registry standpoint in dealing with class, because they had a lot more expertise than we had. And what we have done and endeavored to do as a flag state is to build up our technical bench so that we can help the owner operators with all this regulation that comes on. Because you feel, sometimes, you know, we go into an owner's office and you can feel that how the frustration level is rising, because they're saying, I can't even keep up with the regulation that is existing right now. And then there's all these other things coming down the pike, you know, very shortly from IMO. And so we understand that. And that's going back to what I said before. We really do try to impact in a positive way the process at IMO so that there is more smart regulation. But again, it's the environment we're in. And on the positive side, if you think about it, you look at you know, shipping has never been so clean, environmentally friendly than it has been today. I mean, it's been, if you look back 20 years into where we are today, I mean, it's been tremendous strides. Look at you know, what's on the Marpole side.
Yeah. What? I was going to say, environmentally, I mean, it is the big issue affecting the whole world, really. I mean, so it's not just shipping, but shipping has an important part to play in that. And as Bill said, I think shipping is possibly one of the most efficient modes of transport, one of the cleanest and least polluting. So,
and from our standpoint, Theo mentioned our flag. You know, Clarkson's data has us at 7.9 is the average age. So a younger fleet, generally speaking, is a cleaner fleet. So we're very proud of the fact that we have the youngest fleet in the world. And so it goes to say that if you have the youngest fleet, you probably have the cleanest operating fleet in the world. And I think that's a fair statement for us to make.
One thing I wanted to add is, with respect to the pressure we're getting from the owners, is that we try to be a little bit proactive on making the legislation. Our team in the IMO is not just there to ratify and sign things. I mean, we have active groups, you know, and good people with technical knowledge to even change things when necessary, so the legislation is good, useful, and efficient for the industry. So what we have done in the Marshall Islands, we have 3 different working groups in the registry. One is for yachts, the other one is for the offshore business, and the last one is for the blue water ships, tankers, bulk carriers, container ships, cruise vessels. So offshore units. Offshore units. And the main reason for these groups is to meet with technical and marine safety people from the many committees And we are trying to develop also a sort of a link with the Union of Greek Shipowners and the committee in London maybe, so we can exchange ideas with the Greek owners on what they expect from us.
That's a good point, because one thing that, traveling worldwide and involving, clients all over the world, you never, when you come to Greece, this is the business of Greece is shipping, and the primary business, one of the primary businesses of Greece. And so the level of interest and the knowledge base here is unparalleled. And so we listen very closely to our owners here and operators when they have feedback on regulatory matters. Certainly we take all that into account, as Theo said, working with Union Greek ship owners and others. It's important because these guys have been running ships all their lives, and we respect that, and we respect the Greek community and how it supported us, and we support the Greek shipping community, so again, it's important to get the people. That's the key thing, is really to hear it. A lot of times you get a little frustrated even on our side because the regulations coming down, and then after the fact you really can't do anything to impact the process. If after the fact people are complaining about it, it's important that you have a proactive shipping community like you have here, who are staying on top of the regulation and understanding what's coming down the pike. And we get a lot of feedback from the Greek community, and we also invite several owner operators to join our delegations and add expertise where we need it. And that happens quite often at the IMO.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing the same thing in Asia, in the Far East. We go out and visit companies, and initially they were like, why are you coming to see us? We never ever had a flag come to our office. We have done nothing wrong. And we say, look, we are different. We do like to come and visit our owners. We do like to exchange ideas, and we do like to get feedback. And so it was something very strange for Asian operators in Japan, in Korea, in China to have actually a flag come to your office. So, there's some change that we brought about, and it was quite
you should take off your police officer uniform the next time. You're coming in with uniform.
We've spoken a fair bit about America and the IMO. How close is the registry to Europe and the European Commission? We can see a couple of regulations there that are set to a profound impact, especially on Greek shipping. What's the story there?
John?
We have a good relationship with the Paris MOU and the various port states, but a relationship with the EU flag, really, I suppose we don't really have any real relationship with the European contingent. Okay, we have good contacts with EMSA on that, good relationship there, but and we have clients who have ships also with the various European flags. But at the end of the day, Europe is Europe, and they make their rules and regulations according to their requirements, and we're the same. And okay, there's obviously a lot of cross communication and stuff, but direct contact